Chapter 2, question 17, asks you to write the equality and conversion factors for each of the following pairs of units. Now, a conversion factor tells you how two units relate to each other by using an equal sign. So, for example, in the first one, they're asking for centimeters and inches. The question is, how do centimeters relate to inches? Oops. And so, in order to find these out, you would want to use table 2.7 below. The common conversion factors that you would want to have memorized is that 1 meter equals 100 centimeters, 1 meter equals 1,000 millimeters, and 1 kilometer or kilometer is 1,000 meters. Those are the three conversion factors you want to memorize. Anything else it would often be given to you in a table such as table 2.7. Now, table 2.7 looks like this, and you want to view this as three different columns. So you have the conversion factors that only have metric units in them, conversion factors that only have US units in them, and conversion factors that relate metric units to US units. So in this example, this first one, centimeters and inches, centimeters is a metric unit, and inches is a US unit. So we're going to be in the metric US column on the far right. So we're looking for centimeters to inches. Oh my gosh, and it's the first one right there. 2.54 centimeters is the same as 1 inch. So 2.54 centimeters equals 1 inch. And that is the conversion factor for those two. That tells you how those two units relate. Okay, let's try B. B says milligrams and grams. So the question is to write the conversion for that. How do those two units relate? How do milligrams relate to grams? Now those are both metric units. So when we go to this table, we're going to stick on that left column. That's the column that only lists metric units. We're looking for milligrams and grams. That's down here in the mass. Grams measures in mass, so milligrams and grams, that's right here. 1 gram equals 1,000 milligrams. So there are 1,000 milligrams in 1 gram. So that would be the conversion factor for that. Okay, how about quarts and milliliters? That's what C is asking about. So quarts and milliliters, quarts is a US unit, and milliliters is a metric unit. So we're going to be looking in that far right column between metric and US, quarts and milliliters here. And so you can see there are 946 milliliters in 1 quart. So how do quarts relate to milliliters? 1 quart has 946 milliliters based on that conversion factor there. All right. Then we can go to D. D is asking for the conversion factor that relates deciliters and milliliters. So how do deciliters relate to milliliters? Well, both of those are metric units. So you'd go to table 2.7. You have the metric here. So deciliters to milliliters, there's 1 deciliter in 100 milliliters. So there's 1 deciliter for every 100 milliliters, and that's the conversion factor for those two units. Now this last one asks you about days and weeks, and that's not going to be on this table, but we know that. And so this is really just asking us, do you get the concept of a conversion factor? How do days relate to weeks? Well, there's 7 days in 1 week. Those two are the same thing expressed in different units. And so that conversion factor relates those two units. For question 18, it's basically the same problem type. They want to know the conversion factor, and they're just giving you different units. So same idea in A here, we want to know how centimeters relate to meters. Those are both metric units, so we'd go up here. They're both metrics, so centimeters and meters is what we were looking for. So those are lengths, so centimeters and meters are actually not given on this table. but that is one of the three main ones that you would really want to remember up here. Centimeters and millimeters. And I used meters as the base unit here, but you could imagine the prefixes in the metric system carry over for other base units. Let me explain what I mean. Centi, the prefix centi means 100. So if you had centigrams, that would be 1 gram. Again, centi is 100. So if you had centiliters, that's 1 liter. So you could see how that centi is really giving you a relationship for lots of different base units like meters, grams, or liters. And so likewise with these other two units. So for example, 1 meter is 1,000 millimeters, but so likewise, that milli is really telling you 1,000, so if 1,000 is the milli. So if you had 1,000 milligrams, that's 1 gram. If you had 1,000 milliliters, that's 1 liter. Notice here the only thing that's changing is the base unit. But the relationship stays the same because milli always means 1,000. And you could do a similar thing with kilograms. So with kilo. 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams. 1 kiloliter would be 1,000 liters, and so on. So in this one, they're asking you centimeters and meters. You definitely would want to have that memorized. There are 100 centimeters in 1 meter, just like there are 100 cents in a dollar, or 1 century has 100 years. Okay, B. Pounds and kilograms. How do those two units relate? How do pounds relate to kilograms? And this is a really useful one to know as a nurse because you'll often weigh people in pounds, but the doctor will want the measurement in kilograms because that's where the unit that scientific work is done in. So pounds are a US unit, kilograms are a metric unit, and so we're going to be looking at this far right column here. Pounds and kilograms are at the bottom. There's 1 kilogram equals 2.2 pounds. So there are 2.2 pounds in 1 kilogram. And that's how we'd get that conversion factor. Then they ask for pounds and grams. How do those two units relate? How do pounds relate to grams? Well, pounds are a US unit, grams are a metric unit, and so we have that far right column. That's what we're going to look at. And we can see in that column there are 454 grams in 1 pound. So there are 454 grams in 1 pound. And that's the conversion factor that relates those two units. Milliliters and liters. Now this is one you'd want to have memorized. How do milliliters relate to liters? And milli we know means 1,000. So there are 1,000 milliliters in 1 liter. If you wanted to check that, you could always go back to the table. Milliliters and liters are both metric units. So we're going to be in that leftmost column, and you can see here there are 1,000 milliliters in 1 liter. But that's a conversion factor that is not necessarily going to be given to you on an exam. It's so common and important that it's worth memorizing and knowing by heart. Dimes and dollars. Now this is one that's not going to be on that table, but it's really just testing. Do you really know what a conversion factor means? A conversion factor tells you how two units relate. How do dimes relate to dollars? A dime is 10 cents. There is 100 cents in a dollar, so you would need 10 dimes to get $1. And that's a conversion factor that relates those two units. Different units, but they're the same thing. Having 10 dimes is the same thing as having $1. And so in questions 17 and 18, you are using table 2.7 and also keeping in mind these very important conversion factors to write down the relationship between a bunch of different types of units.